of us have beliefs that don't belong to us. A lot of us have beliefs that belong to other people. And sometimes that can be from our family, our upbringing. It can be just from society in general. It can be from relationships we've been in, right? It could be even from some of our friendships. It can be in a lot of different places or from a lot of different places. Your job is to identify what is actually your belief and what's somebody else's. Hey there, I'm Neca Smith, and welcome back to the Great Big Life TV, where we talk about all things midlife transition. Now, if you've been following along with us this whole time, you know that the last 4 videos consisted of 4 phases of the Great Big Life Cycle. The first of the phases was the transition, the next, the edit, the next was the exploration, the fourth was the implementation, and today is the fifth and final part of that cycle, which is the transformation. And the transformation is different than a transition, in my opinion, in that transition is more about external circumstances and the things we do externally, whereas a transformation is more internal and more based on a mindset. And so that is what we're going to focus on today. I'm going to tell you a story about my own transformation. In my 20s and my 30s, I was someone who was what you would call a go getter. I had my own business. Sometimes I worked full time, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I did contracts, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I was a consultant. And I did a myriad of things, and I wouldn't call myself a multi passionate person, meaning I had a lot of different interests. I had one interest, which was serving and helping people change their lives, and I just did it in different ways, right? I wrote books, I did corporate training, I was a therapist, I was a coach. I just found different ways to essentially do the same thing. And in that, though, it was a lot of hustle, a lot of moving and shaking. I was here, I was there, I was everywhere. I was doing all of the things. And I loved it because of the variety, but at some point, it began to become tiring to me. And it began to feel like I was running on a hamster wheel. And eventually I decided, you know what, let me go get a job. let me, I had just, my life had kind of changed and flipped on me in a way that I hadn't imagined. And so I had to find a job. And I wound up working for or finding a job with a mental health tech startup, which was really something new to me. So, and I went there and it was really supposed to be a pass through job, right? It was supposed to be, I'm gonna do this for a few minutes, 6 months, a year, and I'm out of here because, I don't like jobs and I don't like working for people. And what happened was I wound up staying there. I'm actually still there now. And I've worked in so many different capacities because, again, it wasn't so much about me going to do all of the things. It was really what I had to learn was my value wasn't in all of these things that I was doing. My value was just here in me. And so no matter where I went, no matter what I did, I always came with the same thing, right? Which was helping and serving people improve and get better. Period. I don't care what the job is. I don't care where I go. Like, that's what it's going to be. I could be minding my own business and someone will ask me a question about how they can change and improve their life. And not that I'm an expert at it, right? It's just something that I've done myself and I enjoy doing and I like helping other people do. But the story I'm trying to share here is more about the change in my thinking. I thought I had to go and be and do all of these things all over the place to feel this desire in me to help and serve people. But I didn't have to. I was able to, for me, find it in one place. And I understood, and now I understand that as long as I'm doing things that are about serving others and helping others change and grow, then I'm fulfilled. It doesn't matter where I do it. I'm fulfilled. And so that was a flip of the switch for me. It was less about me. And you hear me talk about the next version of yourself all the time. And the next version of yourself is not about starting over or starting anew. It's about really leaning into who you already are, right? And things that you may have been afraid to do or didn't have the confidence to do. And now you're doing them. So that's what we're going to get in today when we talk about this transformation. How are you going to transform from this past version of yourself, whatever that was. And if you're overachiever, I'm sure something about overachieving, to a different version of yourself, right? To the version of you that's already in there. And how do we pull her out? How do we see the you at your highest creation and your highest being? So let's get into this thing I like to call the transformation blueprint, because we can't really move forward in changing our mindsets unless we have some sort of plan to do so, some sort of strategy to do so. Because let me tell you something, I have been working over 20 years in helping people to change their minds and to change what they do and to change how they live. And it is the hardest thing because there's so many things that are attached to who we were and what we've done. And so, in order for us to really flip that switch and change, it takes a little bit of, it takes a lot of work. Not even a little bit of work, but more than that, it takes a lot of intention. It takes a lot of intention, and you have to be intentional about the changes that you're trying to make in your life. Otherwise, you'll flip back and forth. You'll be back and forth. You'll flitter here and flitter there, and you won't really have the change that you want. So the first thing we need to do in order to make this transformation is to get clear and honest about what we really want. Okay, are you ready? Good. Let's do it. So let's get into this transformation blueprint. Take a screenshot, write these 4 things down, whatever you need to do, but this is the blueprint we're going to follow. So here are the 4 things that you'll need to do. One is to list out what energizes you right now. 2, identify the thought patterns that are holding you back. 3, create an action plan for change. 4, plan the work and work the plan. Right, so let's dive even deeper into these 4 phases. Number 1, list out what energizes you right now. So what are things that give you energy? So the question here could be, what are some things that you just get lost in time doing, right? You just lose track of time when you're doing it, right? For me, it's painting. I enjoy that. Again, I am not a Picasso or anything like that. It's just something I enjoy doing, right? So what are those things? List those things out. When does time fly for you? The thing you can do is take a joy inventory. What activities make you think, I can't believe I get to do this, right? So for me, I get to record podcasts at my job. Like, I can't believe I get to do that. I can't believe I get to just talk about what I want to talk about the way I want to talk about it. Like that, I love that, right? So that is an activity that, brings me joy. What are some things that in your life you think, man, I can't believe I get to do this? Or that you would like to get to do? Write that down. Lastly, in terms of the things that bring you energy, are just your natural talents. What do people always come to you for? What are you good at? What are people always asking you about? Why are people always calling your name or texting you, or I want to know this, or can you help me with that? What are those things? Those are your natural talents, and they should bring you joy. Now, if your natural talents or the things that people are asking you about or asking you to do don't bring you joy, we're not doing that. Okay? We're not doing that. We're only doing those things that when people are coming to you, they bring you joy. They excite you just as much as it excites them. And it might not excite them, it's just exciting to you. So write that down. All right, the second part of this blueprint is to identify old thought patterns that are holding you back. This transformation is mainly about what you think, the internal game, right? You can transition externally, you can change your location, you can change your job, you can change your clothes. But when it comes to transformation, it's an internal game. And I don't care how cute your outfit is, or how cute your haircut is, or how fancy your car is, or the new job you got. If the internal has not changed, if your thoughts haven't changed, if your belief haven't really lined up with that, your transformation will not be complete. It just won't be complete, and you will find emptiness somewhere. There will be a lack of wholeness in your life that you can't identify because you haven't really done all of the work. The easy work is the external changes, right? That's the easy work, quite frankly. The hard work always has been, always will be. I've worked with plenty of people. I know and with myself enough to know the internal game, the changing your mind, the changing your thoughts, and to really examining your beliefs and where they come from is the hardest work you will ever do in your entire life. I would rather work out for 2 hours a day than to change some of these old narratives I have. Because it's hard, it's difficult, but it is worth it. So let's get to it. In this changing our old thought patterns, one of the first things to do is to identify old stories, right? What are these stories that you're telling yourself that are some are unconscious or subconscious, right? But what are these stories that you're telling yourself that aren't really true? So for me, even though I never really verbally said it, again, I thought my value came from what I did. I always got applauded for making good grades, right? I got applauded for doing a good job at work. I got celebrated for, being the top recruiter, right? Or whatever it was. I got those celebrations, but the reality is, or was for me, is like, it didn't matter what I did, right? It didn't matter all of the accolades or the applause. I was still a person of value without that. Because he was the for real. When I wasn't getting applauded, when I wasn't getting a promotion, when I lost almost everything that I had, it's very easy to slip into a depression because I had placed my value in all of the things that I did. And when in all of my doing was no longer working, I was in trouble because I thought who I was based on all of those things, and it wasn't. So even if I'm sitting still, not doing, not earning, not anything, I'm still a person of value and worth. Period, point blank. I don't have to be chosen to be worth anything. I'm worth it just because I'm here. Right? So what are these old stories that are being repeated in your mind? What are these narratives that you have going? Another thought pattern you need to identify are any fear-based thought patterns. Fear is a great paralyzer. I don't know who wrote that quote. I have known it for many years, and it is true. When we are afraid, often we don't move, we don't do anything, we don't make a different decision. We stay stuck and stagnant. And a lot of where I think a lot of women in midlife are is in a fear based thought pattern, right? What if I can't maintain my life if I get this new job? What happens if, I lose my job? Or what happens if I, leave this relationship? Or what happens if, or what if? And life is not lived at the what ifs. Life is lived in the decision after the what if, right? Life is lived after you move past the fear. But you have to realize and identify the fact that this is a fear. This is something that's scary. And like, here's the thing: like, it's okay to like be afraid, but you gotta do that thing afraid. You got to move on. You got to push through that because you cannot really live a full, whole, authentic life if you are afraid. Where you are today, whatever day this is that you're watching this, and there is something that you're afraid of doing, saying, being, in 6 months, 6 years, if you don't change that, I promise you, you're going to still be there. Doing, thinking, believing the same thing, still scared. You don't have time to be afraid. It's time to live. Another big piece of this holding on to old thought patterns are those inherited beliefs. When I was growing up, my grandmother and just all the folks in my family would say, if you put your purse on the floor, you ain't gonna have no money. So for a long time, I avoided putting my purse on the floor, because I want to have some money. And so, in all of my not putting the purse on the floor, I have had times in my life where I baby didn't have no money. It did not matter whether the purse was on the floor, on my arm, on the table, on the desk. It didn't matter. And so I'm making fun of kind of a old school way of thinking, or the old wives' tale. I have no idea, but a lot of us have beliefs that don't belong to us. A lot of us have beliefs that belong to other people. And sometimes that can be from our family, our upbringing. It can be just from society in general. It can be from relationships we've been in, right? It could be even from some of our friendships, you know? It can be in a lot of different places or from a lot of different places. Your job is to identify what is actually your belief and what somebody else's. And you get to choose. If you want to continue to believe that, do it. Do your thing, girl. Don't worry about it. You know, because it might serve you, it might be helpful. There are a lot of things, inherited beliefs that I received from growing up that I still believe, right? They're still helpful. They help me maintain who I am today. But then there are some that like, I can't do that. So much so that there are conversations that I avoid having with family members because of their beliefs or lack of belief, to be quite frank, that I can't have that conversation with you. I cannot take on that energy. Let's move on to the third part of our blueprint, which is to create an action plan for change. This is where we get a little bit more tactical. We start implementing some of these things. So let's start with some daily rituals, right? Some daily themes. So I like to say start with one theme a day that calls to you most, right? So if you're someone who is trying to implement more self-care in your life, or what does that look like on a daily basis? You may not be able to go get a massage every day of the week, right? But what is that? Maybe it's just sitting in silence. Maybe it's putting your phone away. Maybe it is taking a bubble bath. What is it? Find a every day to incorporate whatever that thing is, right? Secondly, you want to add your activities gradually, right? You don't have to do everything overnight, as I said. Little baby steps, right? As we're making this internal changes in these thought processes, what is that? And again, like, what are the thoughts you want to change, right? And because they can't change overnight, what are little ways I can implement those? What are some different thought patterns that I can begin to change? Just small. You all know I love the idea of journaling. So keep a journal, especially when it comes to changing your thoughts. One of the activities that I've taught for many, many years is to identify the unhelpful thought or the negative thought or the hot thought, whatever it is. Identify 3 or 4 of those, right? And you can do it based on a situation that you've been in that has been troublesome to you. But instead of thinking about the situation, I want you to identify the thought that comes first, right? Identify those thoughts. Once you've identified those thoughts, I want you to think about some alternative thoughts. What's a different thought that I can have? What's a more of a growth mindset thought that I can have about this particular issue or concern? And every day, I want you to journal about that. You know, every day, 5 days a week, right? If you want to do it 2 days a week, whatever. But I want you to pay specific attention to these thoughts when they come up and how you're able to adjust how you respond. Because most of life is about your response to it. There are things that are going to happen to you that you have no idea, that you could not think of in your own mind, and they happen. And it's less about this thing that's happening and more about how you think about it. Because once you think something about it, then you do something about it. And that action could lead to dire consequences, right? If you haven't really paid attention to what you think, you have to think about your thinking. If you don't think about your thinking at some point in your life, it can lead you down a path that you don't want to go down. And if you are 37 plus, 40 plus, 50 plus, you already know what the deal is. You already know. Some of you are still going down old paths because you haven't changed your thoughts. You haven't really created new neural pathways. So you're still going down a path that is not serving you and that is not helpful. And so what you have to do is think about your thinking so then you can begin to think about something else and then live a different kind of life. Last but not least in this transformation blueprint is to plan the work and then work the plan. Just do it, right? We talked about journaling. We talked about identifying all thought patterns. We talked about all kinds of things. When are you going to implement these things? One of the things that I have done in the past and I continue to do is to try to create a weekly ritual just to check in, right? So create, either you do a Monday morning check-in, look at what you have wanted to change, look at how you've changed and grown, and then think about that, journal about that if you want. Or sometimes people do it on Sunday evenings, whatever it is, you want to create some sort of weekly ritual, right, to plan these things. I also want you to also think about, what were my energy levels like last week, right? What was my energy like? Definitely in this phase of life, energy comes at a premium, right? So, what are the things that lit you up, right? And then what are the things that drained you? Take note of that, right? Because we want to do less things that drain our energy and more that perk us up. And then we want to continue to set intentions every week. One intention, especially when it comes to this internal transformation, right? If my intention is to be not just a better mother, right? Because sometimes, people say, I just want to be a better mother. Well, what does that mean? Right? How does a better mother think? Right? So before you go do the thing, let's think the thing, visualize what that looks like, and then set an intention for that. And then when we're planning and working the plan, you want to choose one major focus area. Again, don't try to do everything, right? Focus maybe it's 3 months on this or 6 months on that, but try to keep it more focused than all over the place. Again, we are people whose energy is different, our ability to focus is different. And so we need to lean into where we are and not try to go be something we are not in order to make the changes we need to make. That is our transformation blueprint. I know it's a lot. I know it's a lot of work, but the magic certainly happens when we take those small, consistent steps to change. Trust the process, trust yourself, and remember, you're not changing who you are, you're becoming more of who you've always been. So, guess what? I have a special PDF for you based on this blueprint. So, click the link in the comments and get your copy now. All right, that's my time today. Thanks for hanging out with me. Please like this video, share this video. More importantly, subscribe to this channel and turn on those notifications so you'll know when I post a new video. All right, take care. Bye.